Hey there, welcome to SI Now. It's Thursday, November 17th, and I'm Maggie Gray. College basketball is underway, and the Kentucky Wildcats are off to a 3-0 start after a rout of Michigan State on Tuesday at Madison Square Garden. For Coach John Calipari, the trip to New York City coincided with the release of his new book. He stopped by our studio yesterday to talk about it with Ryan Aselta.
All right, Coach, so excited to have you here, and let's talk about the book. The book is called Success is the Only Option, The Art of Coaching Extreme Talent. How do you personally define success?
Well, success is becoming the best version of yourself, and that's on and off the court for us. The greatest thing about what we're doing at Kentucky right now, numbers, ego, minutes, that doesn't matter. Anthony Davis took the 4th most shots on his team. Carl took the 5th most shots. Devin Booker, he came off the bench for us. You're trying to become the best version of yourself. You're trying to share and sacrifice. You're trying to be wrong so others can be right. You're trying to become the ultimate teammate. In the process, be the best version of you. That's bringing happiness to you and then to our team.
So much of what you do and what you write about really is management of
or
talent,
leadership,
personalities,
yeah.
A lot of juggling going on there, and it applies a lot to the business world, as you point out in the book. How many similarities are there when you talk about managing a group of 10, 12, 18, 19-year-old kids, and in the business world where you're managing extreme talent and at the executive level?
And there's a bunch of them. Now, let me say this. Extreme talent flocks to each other. They really do. And if you create a great culture, it's more about their aspirations than the ego. There's certain guys that have extreme talent you do not want in your business.
And you talk about those guys that you stay away from when you're recruiting, right?
They're red flags that through the process of recruiting, we undersell and then over-deliver. And people say, well, how's he getting all these guys? What is he doing? The results. It's a culture they want to be a part of. They look at this and say, I don't have to score 20 and 15 every game, 25. I can come in and be the best version of myself. And if I'm that's going to be good enough. And all I have to work on is being my best, which brings joy, which brings happiness, which is success. Because my son's on the team. You're not going to believe this. He's never going to jump like Malik Monk. But you know what? He's becoming the best version of himself. And I am so proud. And I put him in games because I sleep with his mom. I mean, I got to, he gets in. And
he was in at the Garden.
And he got in at the Garden. That's the first Calipari to ever play in the Garden. And you know what? I'm just proud of his work ethic and what he's doing about being a great teammate. So this book is about, all right, I got a bunch of great people. Or how do I go after, not be afraid? It's amazing what gets done when no one cares who gets the credit. But it only works if there's someone behind there saying, I got your back. I got this. Be about each other. We're going to take care of our people.
All right. You say you undersell when you recruit. It's tough to undersell the program that sells itself, so to speak, though, isn't it?
Well, here's what undersell means. If you're into drinking, smoking, chasing, clubbing, do not come here. If you want to shoot 30 balls a game, you're not coming with me. If you think you're scoring 30 points a game, scoring 30, forget about shooting, you're not coming with me. If you think you're not going to class, you're not taking care of business, you're going to run around and do whatever you want without structure, you're crazy. We have curfew. Oh, yeah, we have curfew. Well, I'm not coming there. I know. That's fine. So you undersell this. And it becomes about players come because they want to get better. They want to get better. They look at this and say, if I'm with other extremely talented players, I've said this, if you walk in a gym and you're the most talented guy, you're in the wrong gym. If you walk in the gym and you go, wow, look at all this talent, you're in the right gym. Because that's how you bring out your best. That's how you challenge yourself. That's how you learn. You're going to lose some. Right. You're going to get knocked down. Another guy's going to be better than you, and you say, how do I do this? I'll give you 2 examples. Tiger Woods changed golf. What did he do? He trained. Now, all of a sudden, they took buses and trucks that had workout equipment with the golfers. Who changed basketball? A guy named Kobe Bryant, who was working out 3 times a day, would go at 4 in the morning. Then he'd go at noon. Then he'd come back at 6. All of a sudden, you better train in this game if you want to be one of the best ever. He changed it. And that's what we're trying to do, too.
Now, that is just a taste of what Coach Cal had to share. Keep watching SI Now because Ryan's entire interview with Coach Cal will air next Friday. It's worth the wait. All right, turning to baseball. And there was unexpected controversy in this year's Cy Young race. Red Sox starter Rick Porcello won the award in the American League, but has a former SI swimsuit model pointed out a fatal flaw in the system. Justin Verlander was this year's runner-up for the award despite finishing with nearly double the amount of first-place votes than Porcello, so fiancée Kate Upton called out the voting system. She said, hey, MLB, I thought I was the only person to blank Justin Verlander. What 2 writers didn't have him on their ballot? Well, those 2 writers, Fred Goodall of the Associated Press and Bill Chastain, the Tampa Bay Rays beat writer for MLB.com. So let's get into it with our own Albert Chen, member of the BWAA, but not voting this year. Should Verlander have won the Cy Young, Albert?
I think that I would have voted for Kluber. Corey Kluber, I think, was the deserving guy. I think you could have made the case for Verlander. I think Porcello, that's a tougher argument to make there. But I think what you're looking at is this day and age when, you have 3 guys who are basically separated by 0.11 in ERA calculations. So this is very close. And if you want to talk about wins above replacement, wins, which is what Porcello led in, 22 wins. But I think that, when it's that close, you can boil it down to many different factors, but I still would go with Verlander 2 behind Kluber, and then Porcello 3rd.
Okay, so you don't even think Porcello should have won this award in favor of Verlander, but then Kluber. Okay, we have all these stats now that we can pick and choose from. Which ones should matter the most in this race?
Well, I think that you need to take a combination of all of them and base it on a lot of different factors. I know that doesn't really answer your question, but I mean, just recently, Baseball Prospectus introduced a new statistic called deserved runs average, which is actually a great metric. It takes into account team defense and ballpark factors. You can talk about wins above replacement, but then people talk about the difference in decimal points, and that isn't really the way to handle wins above replacement because it's kind of this overall value. So the answer is there is no one statistic. I think you do have to take in wins into account a little bit. But you look at the whole picture, it gets very, very complicated. Certainly not, a cut and dry thing. But I think that I liked Kluber because if you do look at the advanced statistics, he was the clear guy there. So I think at the end of the day, Kluber's my guy at least.
Is Kate Upton going to change how we calculate and how writers vote for the Cy Young?
Well, it does expose a flaw, I think, in the system. And look, when it's that close, crazy things happen. I'll refrain from making an electoral college joke here, but I think that it's just a reflection of a very close race, and I think there is going to be some kind of a closer look at how things are decided.
All right, well, stay tuned for what Kate has to say moving forward because we know we have tonight the MVP is going to be announced. Now, Albert, you said if you were voting, Chris Bryant would get your vote in the National League and Mike Trout would get your vote in the American League. Is this the offseason where the Angels are going to finally trade Mike Trout?
And I think that Trout does deserve to win the award. I don't think he will. I think Mookie Betts, because he plays on the Red Sox, I think Mookie Betts will probably win the award there. But I do think Trout clearly, look, he's the best player in baseball. We all know that. And I think that you look at his age and his contract, which is actually very team-friendly. I think if you're the Angels, this is the offseason where you pick up the phone. You see what teams are looking for in a deal. We've seen in recent years, the Cubs are a great example, the Astros last year and recently, you got to tear it down and you got to start from square one. And I think the Angels, who are not in a great spot right now, so many big contracts, not a great farm system, this is where they can reset their franchise.
You could get a boatload of picks or prospects back for Mike Trout. Give us a team. Give us the path to how they can get to the best player in baseball.
Well, to your point, a boatload of prospects. So you have to look at teams that have the prospects, the deep farm systems to deliver that kind of package. And there are those teams out there, but they're teams that aren't necessarily contending right away. The Braves, the Phillies, I mean, they've developed some great farm systems. You know, one interesting team to watch now is the Yankees. I mean, they've made a lot of deals recently where suddenly, kind of overnight, their farm system is really, really good. And that's a team, obviously, you know, they're always in a win now mode. I would also put the Texas Rangers in that kind of group right there at the top because they do have that farm system. They do have the prospects. So I look out there, look, a lot of people think that this would take, you know, a crazy deal doesn't seem realistic. I don't know. You throw in 4 or 5 great prospects, and this could turn into a conversation.
I think you're smart to bring up the Cubs model, too, about tearing it all the way down to build it back up. And let's talk about the Cubs because we believe that Kris Bryant is all but assured to win the NL MVP this year. One person who was not in the race was last year's NL MVP, Bryce Harper. Now, Albert, if you were a general manager, if you're creating a team, would you rather have the cornerstone be Kris Bryant or Bryce Harper?
Yeah, I mean, imagine having this conversation a year ago, how crazy that conversation would have been. I mean, it's kind of unimaginable because you would have put Harper sort of really with Trout as guys, cornerstones of a franchise. But I think it's a lot closer than I think a lot of people would kind of assume right away. And I think the difference and why I would actually go with Kris Bryant here is because as we saw this past season, and this is why he's going to win the National League MVP award, it's not just because of the power he provides, which is right up there with Harper. They actually grew up together in Las Vegas. People who know them going back to those days know that these guys were always the best power guys, you know, growing up, and they are in Major League Baseball. But it's the positional versatility that Kris Bryant gives. I mean, he not only played right field, left field, third base and first base. I mean, he played shortstop and center field also for the Cubs this season. So I think that's what really kind of, I go with Bryant here. And, you know, it's crazy that we're having this conversation, but it just goes to show that Bryant really had a spectacular season.
Capped off with a World Series ring. Albert Chen, thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, coming up, I sit down with the spiritual advisor who has the ears of Russell Wilson, Kevin Durant, Bubba Watson, and Tim Tebow. Interesting guy. But first, Ryan Aselta caught up with Chris Burke, who is preparing for the NFL draft early by grading the prospects by position.
All right, Chris, your mock draft 2.0 is up on SI.com, but let's talk about some specific positional rankings today. Of course, we're going to start with the quarterback position. Who right now do you see as the top draft prospect at QB?
I've got Deshaun Watson from Clemson still in there. He's been up there for us for a while now. It's a tough class to kind of figure because keep waiting for whether it's Watson, Deshaun Kaiser from Notre Dame, Mitch Trubisky from North Carolina, someone to step up and really take the reins here like we've seen in past years. And it hasn't really happened. Everyone's kind of struggled. But I still have Watson there. I think he's got a nice dual threat kind of athletic game, and he's shown up in big games, makes too many mistakes, turns the ball over too much, but we've seen what he can do.
How about 2 and 3 at the position?
Yeah, I have Kaiser from Notre Dame, Mitch Trubisky from North Carolina there, and again, you know, it's sort of waiting to see if anyone will close the season strong, what happens, and both are kind of raw prospects. I mean, I think Kaiser's pretty solid. I think he's a guy you could talk about maybe even stepping in and playing as a starter next year if you can kind of clean up. Trubisky's kind of the wild card because the mechanics, the footwork can be really poor at times, but he's also a guy who likes to stand in the pocket, take some hits, deliver the football. You know, some of the things that we saw positives from Carson Wentz last year, I think you see from Trubisky this year.
What about a sleeper? Anyone we should be keeping an eye on as we, you know, inch our way towards the end of the season here?
Well, he won't be an unfamiliar name to people who pay attention to college football. I think he's probably in the Heisman race right now. It's Baker Mayfield from Oklahoma, and you're not hearing a ton about him from an NFL perspective because, the system that he's playing in is pretty friendly. And also he's on the smaller side, and we know how the NFL feels about quarterbacks that don't necessarily fit their prototype at quarterbacks.
Chris, the running back position is absolutely loaded heading into this year's draft. You've said the draft class this year at running back could be an all-time great. Which backs do you think NFL scouts expect to make the quickest transition to the pro game?
Well, I think the two that obviously are at the top are Dalvin Cook from Florida State and Leonard Fournette from LSU, and two not entirely different backs, but pretty different styles. I mean, Cook's a guy that you want to get on the perimeter and let him kind of explode into the open field. And Leonard Fournette's more of a downhill guy. Again, I think he has that speed. We've seen him take some plays the distance. He has that speed to pull away from guys, but he's more of a downhill back.
You're one of the few writers, Chris, that has Cook ranked ahead of Fournette at the running back position. Why is that?
Well, I mean, I think it's right now because of just his explosive level of play, and also because I think you see him more as someone who can contribute kind of all around and kind of fits the profile of where NFL offenses have gone. And that's not to say that Fournette can't step in and be kind of a Todd Gurley type impact in his rookie year. But I think Cook, just looking around at especially the types of teams that he'll be picking in the top 10, top 15, where I would think both these guys could go. I just think he brings more to the table as an all-around type back.
Now, as far as the wide receiver position, there seems to be a lot of balance at the top of the rankings. Which three receivers do you expect to go the highest in this year's draft?
I have Corey Davis of Western Michigan #1 in our rankings. I think he is a first-rounder. I'm not sure he'll be the first wide receiver off the board because I don't think he'll run all that. I mean, I think he has decent speed, but he's not a 4.4 type receiver. I think we'll probably see, it's very likely that we could see Mike Williams from Clemson and then John Ross, who I have at #3 from Washington. Both those guys also, I think, can be round one guys and maybe ahead of Corey Davis. Davis really just a complete player. He's plays some slot, plays outside for Western Michigan, really sharp routes. I think he's probably the most polished receiver coming out this year. So that's why I like him a lot. But again, I don't know that if you're looking for what we've seen from sort of the trend of late in the NFL, they want those 4.4 guys to stretch the field. I think you get that a little more from Williams, who's really good in the air, really good downfield. And you definitely get that from Ross, who very well could be one of the fastest players in this draft.
All right, you can check out the positional rankings as well as Mock Draft 2.0. That's all up on SI.com. Chris Burke, thanks for being with us, man.
Sure thing. Thank you.
Well, win or lose, it's commonplace to see and hear athletes invoke religion when talking about their craft. But who are the spiritual advisors who guide our superstars? One is Judah Smith, and he stopped by our studio recently. Judah Smith, you work as a pastor, really a spiritual advisor to a lot of the biggest athletes in the sports world today. We're talking Russell Wilson and Kevin Durant and Bubba Watson. I mean, many, many others. Is there something you find that is unique to athletes and some of their worries as opposed to other people who attend your church?
Yeah, I think most people that attend our church don't get tweeted about nonstop and get criticized after their daily work. So I think sometimes it's dealing with criticism. Frankly, I've learned, I think, a lot more from those guys than they've probably learned from me. Their ability to kind of tune some of that out and focus on what really matters and do their job and play a game that they love.
Your book's called How's Your Soul? You wrote that after the Super Bowl, where the Seahawks lost to the New England Patriots at the goal line, you talked to Russell Wilson the next day and you said, "How are you feeling?" And he said, "I'm just excited I got to play in another Super Bowl." I think a lot of people would read that and say, "Come on, you had to be feeling bad about losing at a last second play." How was he able to look past that so fast?
I think Russ is one of the most mentally strong, positive individuals I've ever met in my life. I'm only 38, but he's extraordinary, and I really meant that when I said it. It was absolutely factual and true. I learned so much from watching Russ, his courage, and also his ability to bounce back. If you'll notice, even on the football field, when he gets hit, he pops up real fast. That's part of his mentality and his perspective. And like I said, I've learned a lot from him.
You also are an advisor to Tim Tebow. Tebow is now transitioned to baseball. Did you have to talk to him about letting football go and letting that dream go?
Honestly, I think, again, Tim is one of those guys. He can shift focus very quickly. So I know this sounds funny because I guess I'm their advisor, but I feel like they are so encouraging. And Tim's ability to go, okay, if this chapter's closing, I'm moving on to the next chapter. And that's something that I think all of us aspire to do. When one door closes, believe that another's going to open.
Yeah, you mentioned before that what separates most athletes from regular people is that we don't get tweeted about and criticized for doing our normal work. Kevin Durant is someone who took a lot of criticism, and in some ways it seemed to have really affected him. Have you noticed that it started to wear on him how much blowback he got from moving to Golden State?
I haven't noticed any of that in my watching Kevin. I think Kevin is an extraordinary human being, and honestly, his positivity. I can't imagine what it would be like to go through what Kevin went through in those matter of a couple of months or a month. But he keeps his head high and he focuses on what matters. And I'll go on record to say it's going to be a very dangerous thing when these Warriors really begin to gel. It could be quite a run.
Since the election, we've heard a common refrain, which is keep politics out of sports. What would you say to those who believe that religion should be kept out of sports as well?
Well, when it comes to policy and when it comes to faith or religion, it is a part of our everyday, ordinary life all the time. And whether we're aware of it or not, our worldview, our view of God or his absence or his reality, our view of policy or no policy, it dramatically, more than we realize, affects our everyday life. And so when we start to disassociate religion from sports or policy from sports, I think part of that is unrealistic, because I think they go together and they affect each other whether we're aware of it or not. And so you have to seemingly, or not seemingly, but you really have to applaud athletes who are saying, hey, policy, procedures, religion, faith has everything to do with what any of us do for our work, including sports. And so incorporating those, I personally have no problem with.
Judah Smith, congratulations on the book, How's Your Soul? You can buy it on Amazon or wherever books are sold.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's going to do it for this Thursday edition of SI Now. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. It's hard to believe, but it's our 900th episode of SI Now tomorrow. Chris Canty, Ryan Aselta, and John Wertheim will all be here. We hope you will too. But until then, stick with SI.com and don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SI Now Live. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for our 900th episode.